Good morning. Welcome to Daily Elevation. I'm your host, Fred Rawls, coming to you on a beautiful Tuesday morning after a very long weekend. And hope everybody's had a great weekend. And we're coming to you again with a series from the Path of the Righteous Gentile, a book written for the B'nai Noach. It was written by Rabbi Chaim Clorfene and Yakov Rogalsky. And today we're starting in the ninth chapter, and the theme of this one is theft, stealing from someone. So there's many reference points, and this is one. It says, I think everybody usually has this problem because we don't realize that sometimes what theft is and how it applies to even some things we're not even thinking about. Like sometimes people don't even think about kidnapping as being theft, but that's probably the greatest theft is when you take someone from their home or without their permission or, child abduction. It's probably one of the greatest thefts in this world. So anyways, hope everybody's been blessed and happy and filled with joy. And I'm on vacation this week, spending time with my daughter. So that's what we're going to try to get this one in, and hopefully this will be good for everyone. Anyway, so let's get started. Out of all the categories of the 7 laws of Noah, the prohibition against theft may be the most difficult to obey. Human history and psychology are in clear agreement with the Talmudic statement that man's soul has a craving and longing for incest and robbery. But unlike incest, committing theft is often a simple matter in which the opportunity presents itself almost constantly. Moreover, the commandment prohibiting theft includes aspects in which that without careful Torah study might elude a person and be considered acceptable behavior. Therefore, a frequent view of the laws of theft is important. So that's why a Torah study is important, because we might overlook some things that we might not even think about what theft is. So we have so many laws, even in America, even in our Constitution, we don't realize that we might be breaking those laws without even thinking about it. The commandment prohibiting theft that was given to the children of Noah is a single comprehensive law with many parts and details. It is virtually identical to the 16 separate commandments dealing with theft that was given to the children of Israel. Let's see. Israel, this means that God's will concerning theft is essentially the same whether the person involved is an Israelite or a Noahide. The only difference involves the return of a stolen object, worth less than a pruta, the smallest coin denomination in the times of the Talmud. So the pruta is, what was a pruta? It's here somewhere. It says a pruta during the time of the Talmud was, pruta might be compared to a 1 agora coin in Israeli money, which in 2013 would be worth 1/3 of a U.S. penny. Israel stopped minting the one agora coin in 1991. Today, the smallest denomination coin being minted in Israel is a 10 agoret coin worth about 3 pennies. So, pruta is about the price of 1/3 of a penny. If such an object is stolen from an Israelite, it need not be returned. For the Israelite is presumed to forgive the theft of so small an object and forego its return. But the Noahide does not forego an object worth less than a pruta, and such a stolen object must therefore be returned to him. And we know this because even in America, that if you're in a store or if you're in a something like that, and someone, uh, have you see somebody's money on the table? Could even be in your own household. Could be something sitting on the counter. And I know one time when I went to a restaurant and I had 50 cents at the machine that kicked out at the register, that I didn't grab the 50 cents. And I realized that, so I went back, and the guy that was next to me already took the 50 cents. And boy, he didn't return it. So it's just like, it's that temptation to take because it's not yours, but it was someone else's, even though you don't even need it. You don't even need it, probably 50 cents. What is that in America today? But it's just like that. People just have a lust and desire to steal. It's just like, it's like they're just like an animal. They don't have no conscience about it. Then when I asked about it, the person was like, he walked out the door. It's like, no, he's guilty as guilty for what he does. So it really doesn't matter the value of the thing. It's you took something that maybe had some value to someone else. Like, it's really not about the money. It's about what you're doing. The commandment prohibiting theft holds men and women equally liable in every aspect and detail. Now we know this. One is liable for punishment whether he brazenly robs in a public or sneaks into a house on a moonless night. One is liable to punishment by the court of law whether he steals money or any object or kidnaps a person. That's what I said. And he is liable no matter from whom he steals. In my opinion, someone who kidnaps a person should be more liable from the court of law. Why? Because when you kidnap a person, you take them against their will. It's really, really the most heinous of things to do, because that person will be sometimes, especially if it's a child, they'll be traumatized. So that thing could go on forever and ever. So to me, the point of kidnapping should be a greater punishment, in my opinion. A Noahide who steals a beautiful woman from the enemy during time of war is liable for punishment. It is presumed that he kidnapped her and that she is a married woman. Of course, he's not going to know that. But normally that's what you're thinking. The children of Noah are forbidden to engage in wars of land conquest. But if such a war does occur, and in the process a land is conquered, what the Noahide acquires of this new land belongs to him as ex post facto. That means just like the children of Israel when they went into the land to possess it. I guess everybody probably would have got their own land. It was probably divided among the nations, like it was the 12 tribes of Israel. That it was all divided according to each person, and that's how in America, that's how it's divided in our country. That when you buy a plot of land, it's got dimensions, and most people have those things already charted out. So you can't go in. So when you buy that land, so when there's a time of war, now like we see the one that's going on over in Ukraine, these Russians are going and taking this land. Now this is what we're talking about, theft. This is definitely theft because they're going in and taking land to possess it. But I guess once they say that once you overcome that land and you take the land, that so I guess if a Russian once they get that land and it's given and they take it during wartime, that someone can then it will be given. That's going to be to Russia. It's given to Russia or whoever it's going to acquire it. Later, authorities ruled that a man who rapes or seduces a woman who is not forbidden to him is liable for punishment because he is stealing from the woman's worth and from his own personal use. What's called rape. That is not forbidden to him. So it might be a single one, but if it's a married woman, it's punishment. So he's talking about someone who might be that you meet at the club or something, and you But you know what? If you take someone like that and you steal from that woman's virtue, and you take advantage of them, there's punishment for that in this country. So we know how heinous that crime is, because you know what? You don't just take the woman's, it's like you're taking a piece of her away through aggression. And it's very traumatic to a woman. This judgment applies only to a man who seduces a woman, not to a woman who seduces a man. A woman who is considered unable to truly seduce or rape a man, as a man must have an erection to have intercourse, and therefore his involvement in the act is one of acceptance and volition. I guess I might be thinking, unless a man was held captive and for some reason that they took advantage of the guy and made him cause to have an erection, and I guess I might be stealing his virtue that way. But that's not a normal. If something happened like that. The early sages of Israel were in a disagreement as to whether the children of Noah were forbidden concerning usury and overpricing before the giving of the Torah. In either case, both of these commandments are in effect today because they are given to Moses at Mount Sinai, not because God commanded Noah to follow them. It is a general principle of the 7 universal commandments that they are binding only because they were given on Mount Sinai. The great Jewish sage Nachmanides states that overcharging is clearly one of the tenets of the commandments prohibiting theft. Overpricing, we might see that in the gas trade today. Overpricing, like someone is, but we know that's like in our country today because of the lack of fuel, that we might think that someone could be price gouging. Someone might be taking effect of it. It doesn't have to be so high, but because everything's going on and it's chaos and everybody's doing it, and it's kind of like, but Hashem knows. Hashem knows who's taking advantage of the gas thing or whatever going on, or like the price of medications or the price of things. So a lot of people take advantage of people and they overprice things. So we see that like in lumber trade, and because there's a shortage. When there's a shortage, people, what they raise the price. But sometimes, you know what? They'll probably even exceed the price to get a better profit. This means that a transaction whereby one is greatly overcharged is considered an illegal transaction and may be voided. Usury, the act of lending money at unfair interest rates, is in the same category. Usury is forbidden as an illegal transaction. The category of overcharging includes the admonition against using false weights and measures. This applies to any store owner or salesperson, whether he is selling fish or precious stones or measuring land for sale, as it is written, "You shall do no unrighteousness in judgment in measuring land in weight or in measuring liquids." Leviticus 19:35. Inasmuch as an act of falsely weighing and measuring is forbidden, it is similarly forbidden to have such false weights or measuring devices in one's possession. As written, "You shall not have it in your bag diverse weights, a great and small." Deuteronomy 25:13. And we know that's, how can that be in practice today, is when you go to weigh your fruits, like on the scale, like when you're gonna check out, that somehow, some way that they manipulate the scale that you put your fruit on. Or you know what, it can be even when you drive in your truck and you're going to the landfill and you drive up your truck for how much it weighs with the stuff in it, and you dump it and you come back and bring your truck, and that's how they determine how much they're going to pay you for what you brought in. So for like, if you got like metal or something that you're selling, whatever it might be, so when you come back and they manipulate the scale to be heavier, so or less, so they'll pay you less for what you was doing. That's what that could be too. But you know what? I think the government or your country or your state or your city sets the taxes and the weights and how much a price should be concerning. Now the store is going to consider the price, but for example, taxes. There's a set tax that's usually for a city or a state. So if someone's charging you more than that, that could be usury. Inasmuch as the act of falsely weighing and measuring is forbidden. Well, I already just read that. Since sustenance comes from the hand of God, a man should earn it through honesty and not trickery. In Talmudic times, the fair amount of profit gained was thought to be 1/6. But since profit margins are considered somewhat relative and subjective, the fair amount remains to be determined by the norms set in each generation. A Noahide is not obligated to return an object that he stole, but since he stole it, he is held accountable for the prescribed punishment in a court of law. This is according to Rashi's opinion, which holds that when a single act warrants two punishments, the stricter punishment is enforced, and the lesser one is dropped. Other authorities argue that this principle applies only to an Israelite and not the laws of the Torah, and that when a Noahide has stolen, he is obligated to return the stolen article to its rightful owner, despite the fact that he may have incurred the death penalty. Now, I might say some of these laws that we're talking about from the Torah is inscribed when they're living in the lands of Israel to the Israelite. But for the B'nai Noach, it's different because we know that even in this land, the laws concerning theft, most people know about that. When you take someone or you take advantage of someone and you overprice something like selling, like people like, another thing is like these loan companies, that overcharge you like 25% to get a loan. That's something to me should always be stopped, because you know what? You go in, you get you a $500 loan, but it ends up costing you $1,500 just to pay that thing back. And it's like, that's really taking advantage of someone. That's something what I'm talking about. That's something that should be criminal because of it's allowed because you know what? It's a business, whatever it is. But to charge someone 25, 30% interest on money or something like a car loan, like a lot of salespeople do, a lot of used car lots will sell a car at a high rate of interest when it's only worth $500, but end up costing someone $3,000. Yeah. But if you steal something, you know what? In our country, we know that when you steal something, a car or anything like that, from somebody or from an establishment, there's a laws to a retribution for that. One may well ask why the thief who is going to be executed anyway should bother to return the stolen object. He could just as well leave it to his spouse or child or a friend and therefore has some indirect benefit. The explanation goes right to the heart of the intent of God's law, which is just and merciful at the same time. Every punishment meted out through the justice of the Noahide court serves as an atonement, sparing the transgressor punishment in the eternal world. This, of course, assumes that the convicted criminal repents of his transgression, returns to God before he is executed. So that means whatever the person did, if he stole from you, if he's going to be executed, probably the thefts could have been included. Sometimes when someone steals from someone's home, someone ends up getting killed because of that. So what they're going to do, they're going to give them they're probably going to give them the punishment for the murder more than the theft, because you know what? The punishment is going to be greater. But if he stole something, and probably should, they're probably going to make the part if the thing cannot be returned, he's probably had to pay a fine towards whatever that thing is, so they can pay back the person. Like if for some reason they stole a car and it gets totaled and wrecked, and it can't be restored, so the fine, the penalty for whatever happened to that car, like it's a car theft, and that person gets killed, the owner of the vehicle. So the guy should probably, they're probably going to make the person also. It depends on if he gets a death penalty, but he's probably going to have a fine paid to pay back the amount of that car. But especially if the person lives. Now, if the person lives, yes, they're probably going to get a fine, plus he's going to get time in jail for the theft and for the bodily injury. So, we know this. Everybody knows this, but it's good to have a reminder that what God says about it. Yes, we know it's in American law and people know what's right and wrong, but we need to know what God says about these things, because the most important thing is he's sovereign. He's the king. So we need what his law says, not man. Because of the justice of the courts, therefore, a man can transgress and still repent and receive a share in the world to come as a righteous person. We know that, teshuvah, repentance. What happens then if a man commits a crime and is not punished by the courts? Suppose there are two men, one who killed negligently but without premeditation, and another who killed with malice aforethought. There were no witnesses to either crime. God will bring the two men together through divine providence. For instance, on a crowded street, the one who killed unintentionally might be driving a car, while the killer is crossing the street as a pedestrian, not paying attention to what he is doing. The driver runs through a stop sign, killing the pedestrian. So what has God wrought? The murderer is killed, and the manslaughter is now held as manslaughter. So this is the thing where it's good to know that God's ways are above our ways, and we see that somehow God will use circumstances and situations to get justice that we might not comprehend. So when we see someone that dies a uh, very violent death through a car accident, like this was just talking about, there's someone who was a manslaughter, he done something. So maybe he's trying to get away because he did kill someone, but no one know about it, and he runs through a stop sign and he kills the person who was a murderer. So it's kind of like it's merit for merit, and there's justice served, but the man will probably go to jail for being a manslaughter. So he's going to go to jail for what he did. And we know this happens all the time, because sometimes people steal a car and they're getting in a police chase and going 100 mile an hour down the street, and they'll run some people over, like they did a couple years ago, where some guy that was crazy or nuts, and police was chasing him, and he run over a bunch of people and threw and killed some people. So, but no one ever dies without God's, being a part of that. So, but the thing is, we're just talking about justice when concerning theft and retribution for their crime. A Noahide who strikes another Noahide transgresses the commandment against theft and is liable for punishment by the court. For the damage he caused brought a physical and psychological loss to the person struck. A Noahide who strikes an Israelite also violates the commandment of Kedushat Israel, violating the sanctity of an Israelite. So that means if you hurt someone and this person cannot go to work, I can be concerned with that, because you already stole from his livelihood, because he can't go to work and make money to take care of him and his family. Psychological loss could be, when there's rape concern. Psychological loss, you just stole from this person their capability to live because of the psychological trauma. This is theft too. So this is something we don't even think about. That could be theft. A person is forbidden to covet the property and physical dwelling place of another, as expressed by the scriptural verse, "You shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is his neighbor's." Exodus 20:14. Since the children of Noah are commanded to withhold themselves from committing theft, they are similarly commanded concerning deterrence to that transgression, namely desire. So basically, theft comes from a desire where someone it's because of the desire and the lust that we have for something that is not our that. It's even beyond the animal. But we see animals, they do this all the time in the nature because you know what? They don't know right from wrong. So you see them stealing everybody, each other's food, fighting over hyenas fighting lions, lions fighting hyenas and jaguars, but they're always fighting for their own different food. But the human being though, who's made an image of God, we know right from wrong. So we know that but we have a desire to take from something that isn't ours. And covet is usually the desire that's causing that. Coveting something that belongs to another is in precisely the same category as desiring the object, except it takes it a step further, involving action. Whereas desire remains something of the heart, total covetousness presupposes that a person does something to fulfill his desire, such as pressure the owner or plead with the owner to sell him his house or field. Now, this might be like we hear in the world today about mortgage theft, where somebody, because our mortgages are online now, that title theft, that's what the title to your house is online. And somebody can, with one transaction, one sheet of paper, go to the county courthouse and put that thing in their name, and they'll make a loan against that property. So they basically take that property from its owner, and then people don't even know it. So and it all starts with that desire that you want what's not even yours. So this guy's going to take advantage of these people, and they don't even know it. And then we don't know it. Only God knows that this is happening behind the scenes. But it's they say it's one of the greatest crimes today in the world is title theft, where someone takes the title of your house out of your name and they puts it in their name, and they put a loan against it, and they get the money from it, and you can be evicted from your house because someone else owns your house now. So this is what that might be. But it all starts with that desire for someone else's stuff. So that's why they're going to pressure you to get out of your house. It said someone's going to press you or plead the owner to sell him his house. So that's what they're going to do. It's going to be held against you to do something against your property that you weren't even thinking about doing. When mankind is judged each year on Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the Hebrew month of Tishri, God apportions each person's income in sustenance and all forms of material acquisitions for the coming year. Nothing a person will do can add to what he has been allotted, and no one can take away what he has been given to someone. As King Solomon wrote, the blessing of the Lord is that which makes rich, and the painful labor adds nothing to it. Proverbs 10:22. Therefore, to desire what belongs to another, and all the more so to covet it, is an act that betrays a lack of faith in God. For it is said, who is happy? One who is satisfied with his portion. One is forbidden to enter another's property stealthily and take back one's own object, for thereby he is acting in the manner of a thief. Instead, one should confront the other and say, this belongs to me, I am taking it back. So what he's saying is, if you know that someone stole your stuff, it's better to get a police officer to go with you to obtain the object versus try to do it yourself, because you become like the thief. You enter into someone's land without permission. One is forbidden to add to one's own property by surreptitiously moving the landmarks back into the neighbor's property. It is written, you shall not remove your neighbor's landmark. Deuteronomy 19:14. Now I had this happen with my property that I owned just not recently, where my neighbor and I, we started when I first moved there. We feuded over the property line where we was to mow, and he said, "Well, it's here," and then I was saying it was here. But we came into agreement. We solved the problem, and there was no conflict. But we're just saying it's just like that until someone can know where the boundary line is. You can only go so far. You should put up maybe a fence or put a line or something to know how far you could go from the beginning. But when someone tries to say, you know what, this is mine and it's not theirs, that's why we have real estate attorneys and courts of law to dissolve things like that. This act of usurping one's land through moving a landmark involves an idea of unfair competition. For example, if a person has a business in an area that will only support one business of that type, and someone moves in across the street and opens the same kind of business, this is said to be removing one's neighbor's landmark. Or today, the prevalent act of duplicating books or films or recorded songs without permission, even for one's private use, is an act of moving your neighbor's landmark. For one who does this denies his neighbor the right to make a living. And this could be done when someone has copyrights on something, but you take it and you earn money from it. That's stealing from that person, their livelihood, and you're making a profit off their livelihood. So that's what that is. You're stealing someone's copyright, or now we know that there's a lot of places around. Now that's why people don't know these laws, that when there's one hamburger joint on one side and then one puts a street on the other, and they make competition, they could be taken away from their livelihood. Now that's done all the time now. So what's to know if it's even prevalent today would be, that would have to be figured out by Hashem himself. But this is done all the time. One side of the street, you got one hamburger joint, next one another hamburger joint. There could be a pasta place, and but this is done all over the place. Mexican restaurant, and then there's a Taco Bell, so that could take away from the profit from this man's business. It is forbidden to withhold the salary of a worker. If one hires a worker, it is incumbent on the employer to pay the worker his wages at the conclusion of the day's work, unless a different arrangement has been agreed upon ahead of time. That's why most people today, they either get paid weekly or bi-weekly, but it all depends on what you're doing. Now, if you do a job like cutting down trees or mowing a yard, you should get paid for what you did. And someone forbids to pay you after you've done your job, that's why we have courts of law. It is similarly forbidden to refuse to repay a loan of money when one has the means to repay, or to refuse it to return a borrowed object. And this happens a lot when people go to these places where they get furniture to rent and they pay for them, to pay them off so they can own them, but then they don't make their payments. And then people come and get them back, and people try to fight them for getting them back. Well, that's against the law. Because when you sign that contract to say, you know what, you're going to pay weekly for this object, and you don't pay for it, then they say, hey, we need our payment, or we need the furniture, one or the other. Well, that's lawful. And if you say you don't want to do it, then you're stealing, you're theft. You're taking advantage of this company. All those are enjoined by the verse, you shall not oppress your neighbor nor rob him. Leviticus 19:13. An employer who works in a field in a restaurant is permitted to eat the produce of the field or some of the restaurant food as he works, if it is in connection with his work. Now, we know a lot of this stuff's happened. I was allowed to do it when I worked in a restaurant, but you don't want to eat more than you need. For instance, if a person harvests grapes, he is permitted to snack on the grapes as he works. Similarly, if he is a cook, he is permitted to eat some of the restaurant's food. Now, that's going to be upon the opinion of the owner, really. But if he merely irrigates the land on which the grapes grow, his snacking on grapes is considered theft. Similarly, if he is a dishwasher in a restaurant, his snacking on the restaurant's food is considered theft, unless the owner expressly permits it. That's the key, as the owner permits it. Even if permissible cases, the employee may snack only as he works. If he loads up a basket and strictly takes the food home to feed himself or his family, it is theft. If a person steals anything worth more than a pruta, and then another steals it from him, both transgress the commandment prohibiting theft. So if you steal something and someone else steals it from you, like I think a lot of this happens when someone steals something and they take it to a what they call what's it called? When someone takes it somewhere and they sell it, and someone else buys it and they sell it. So that could be 3 thefts all at once. Pawn shop, that's what I mean. So if you steal someone and you're able to pawn it and then someone else comes and gets it, that could be crimes committed by everybody. Anyways, that's it. That's the laws concerning theft. So the major setbacks is, everybody has a desire to take something. So basically, in my opinion, is one way to not be theft is don't be worried about what someone else's has. Like, someone else's house, someone else's car. Like I know a lot of family members that, they want to appease people. So what they do, they try to because they want to look like someone else because they're coveting. They covet. That's what covet is. You desire to be like someone else. So to get someone, you'll buy a house or buy a truck, and because you want to be like these people, and you end up making things worse for yourself. And then you find out, hey, you know what? You want what someone else, and you find out that once you get this thing and it's done, like for example, you cover someone else's wife, you can take advantage of her. And normally what happens is once you're done with that situation, it's over. You really didn't even want the thing. You just want it because they had it. That's it. And that's the sin. That's the wrongfulness of this thing, because once you get the thing, you found that the value of it's not even worth anything. So it's like, so what you just done wasn't worth anything. It's like it has no meaning to you, no purpose. So you have a lack of desire after it. So anyways, that's the laws concerning theft from the path of the righteous Gentile. And the next one will be chapter 10, the limb of a living animal. We will continue this a couple of days from now. All right, be blessed and have a great week. God bless. Bye.